Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the AI Monetization Podcast. I'm Binny, the co founder of Project Pro. As you know, in this podcast, we speak with industry leaders who are looking at business outcomes and ROI with AI. And we kind of understand where they are seeing it and where is the value showing up inside enterprises. And today, we have somebody, who's most appropriate for that, which is Shadab. Shadab is a sales director on data and AI at Microsoft for the United States, where he focuses on healthcare, life sciences, and retail customers. Shadab, it's very nice having you on the podcast, especially because of your extensive multi-decade experience helping enterprises roll out analytics. But also, you being part of an organization, Microsoft, which has had the vision very early on to see what was coming and invest significantly behind it. And in many ways, is responsible for this revolution we are going through right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Um, Pleasure to be here, Binny. I admire the work that you have done with the Project Pro podcast. Particularly, the conversation that you are trying to facilitate with different hosts and the exchange of thought that you have about the monetization. I think those aspects are extremely important. AI is, in my view, less about technology, more about the adoption, more about the monetization, more about the experience. And I think those aspects sometimes get missed in terms of just chasing the latest model, but these are
Mhm.
extremely important aspects.
Agree. Yeah. But it's a very interesting point that you made, which is it's less about, I mean, because when you go outside and you read, it seems as if it's all about the technology, because that's all you can read about the latest, billion parameter model, and that's all you read about. But could you talk a little more about, from your side, how are you seeing that it's less about technology, but more about the business and the use cases and the ROI?
Yes, and I'm going to draw upon some of my past experience and my present visibility into the work that I do. I think it would be appropriate for me to give a little bit more introduction about myself to
Hmm.
let you know like what visibility and perspectives I have. So
Hmm.
I have like almost like 24 years of experience working in the data analytics and AI. That's all I've done in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I've done several roles from consulting to implementation to and most of the time working in front of customers. So
Mm.
that has given me in perspective and experience into the problems that happen during the implementation, the benefits that you actually uh, get from those implementation and the challenges that you run into.
Mhm.
I'm the director of data and AI at Microsoft. I actually work with several different industries customers, so I've experienced working across several of those industries. That has given me a
Mm.
little bit of perspective about how different customers are adopting or adapting rather to the AI. So and I also I'm AI evangelist, that's what I would say.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I have my own podcast and YouTube channel as well, which is the AI Files.
Mhm.
And that's why it's actually a pleasure to be here at the one of the fellow podcast Project Pro as well. So let's talk about the comment that I made about it's less about technology and more about the adoption and monetization. The thing is that there has been actually a lot of technology, and the adoptions are not technology driven.
Mm.
Adoptions have different goals and the agendas. If it is about the technology, then blockchain would have been a really good adoption. It did not
Mm.
gain as much adoption. In fact, there has been a lot of technology that have come and go,
Mhm.
and really haven't made much impact.
Mm.
Um, Now, AI has a different I would say different potential altogether. The reason being because AI cuts across a lot of things. It kind of basically, by definition, it mimics us, which means that whatever we do, it can do, right? So it has altogether a different horizon of the potential that AI can make. However, you may have as good a technology like AI, but if people do not adopt it,
Mm.
it's no use, right?
Mhm.
If people and we're starting to see some of those examples where people are resisting some of the adoption. On the other hand, we have seen like 80% is the failure rate of the AI projects. So why is that
Wow.
so? If it is about technology, it should have been 100% success rate, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
is not
Mm-hmm.
80% because, and there are several factors behind it. But I kind of have seen a pattern that all these failures are about, for example, sometimes the data is not right, sometimes the model is not right. But again, when you actually look back upon that, again you will find a human angle to it. Okay, so if data wasn't right, why did the humans do not put the enough efforts to curate the data? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
did they find the wrong source of data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or did they make the wrong choice? At the end, I feel that the humans are responsible to make something successful. At the end, they need to make sure that this is targeted towards certain goals. You are taking the right approach. So the adoption is not just about the user's adoption. The adoption is also about the owner's adoption of the AI, right? Understanding what works, what does not work, and adopting it and then doing it. Otherwise, we will continue to see this failure rate of 80%. If it is about
Mm-hmm.
technology, everything would have been hunky and dory, but it is not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. And you focus on um, uh, use cases in multiple verticals, right? Life sciences, pharma, retail. Uh, is there a difference in what is a priority use case for each of these verticals, or is sales always a first priority and support is a priority, or how does that change based on vertical that you see?
I would say, overall, at Microsoft, we see across the industries, the
Mm,
use cases are divided into four buckets largely.
mhm,
Number one is the enriching employee experiences, right? So
mm,
the users inside the organization, you are enriching, you're trying to make that better because there is a crisis. People are burnt out, people need more productivity, they need better tools, they need to be able to do things faster.
mhm,
So you can enrich the employee experience, and that again cut across the industries. Number two is a reinventing of customer engagement. Again, cuts across the industry. You have different kind of customers in different industries, right?
mhm,
Sometimes it's consumers, sometimes it's B2B customers, etc. Number three is the reshaping of the business process. And this is where a lot of automation comes, right? Or the reimagining of the business process comes. So you can
mhm,
entirely eliminate certain overheads in the process. You can redo the entire business processes. And finally, the bending the curve on the innovation. Now, these are the four broad buckets, which are across the industry same. Now, of course, the examples will differ, right? So, for example, in a life sciences industry, when you talk about bending the curve on innovation, it
mhm,
would be about can we discover better molecules, right? Can
mhm,
we discover better compounds which can lead to better drugs? Can you reduce the cycle of drug development, which sometimes could be 10 years, right, to create a blockbuster drug. And many times there's no guarantee it will even succeed. On the other hand, the other industries, let's say telecom and media, they would basically be looking for identifying the materials which would lead to better, let's say, connectivity, right, or better transmission of the signals, etc. So I think examples will differ, but broadly these are the four buckets which cuts across the industries. and
mhm,
and this is where we see most of the impacts coming pretty much, right? So like for example, productivity based use cases are a lot because they're actually enriching the employee experiences, and a lot of employees are using like copilots or GitHub copilots for coding, for example, etc. So there is a widespread adoption. I would say employee experience is probably number one. Number two is about reinventing the customer engagement, and number three is reshaping business processes, and finally the bending the curve on innovation. This is the order in which we see a large adoption and impact of the use cases in AI.
okay, very interesting. And what about use case in like sales itself, Shadab, like helping sales teams, sales enablement teams? Does that come in the third bucket of reshaping business processes? Is that where it comes? Or
I would say it's a great example because
Mhm.
when you enable certain use cases in the sales process, that actually starts impacting a lot of things.
Mm.
Now, of course, part of that is productivity, which is basically enriching employee experience, right? So it cut
Mm.
across. So for example,
Yeah.
at Microsoft, we are all enabled with different copilots. Like there is, in fact, a copilot for sales, which
Mhm.
actually makes it easier for me to review my opportunities. We use
Mhm.
the Dynamic 365, and I can use a copilot for sales and reviewing those opportunities and
Mhm.
making better updates like
Mhm.
CRM hygiene, etc.
Mhm.
I can also identify the leads, right? It gives
Mhm.
me the signals. It tells me
Mhm.
that okay, what's happening in my account and what are the different areas and solution that I can probably position which I'm not already doing. So it
Mhm.
can look at different data like current consumption, the opportunities, the industry, and then give me the signals, and I can act upon those signals. Not just
Mhm.
that, I mean, it gives me the prepared material, right? It can give me the mailer, it can give me the campaign material, etc., and
Right.
I can do that. So it definitely enrich my own experience in doing things.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
the other hand, it also actually helps kind of reinventing the customer engagement
Mhm.
because now I can actually work with customer in different ways, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes the demos that I do, and sometimes like the whatever support the customer needs, the information I can get to them faster, right? Using the Gen AI, for example, chatbot that I've access to, right? I use the agent, for example, doing the research and finding the information for customer. I can respond faster. I can
Yeah.
respond better, and that obviously enhances the customer engagement. So I would say many of these use cases cut across, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it could be broadly into one category, but they can lead to the results across
Yeah.
those buckets as well.
Makes sense. And some of the use cases you mentioned, for example, dynamically generating these marketing assets and collateral and things like that. So do you think so? In a way, that kind of also falls into the sales enablement, revenue enablement kind of teams. So do you see AI kind of bringing together sales enablement, sales all into the same, I don't know, platform?
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
yeah.
Give you certain examples, right? How it
Mm,
really comes to the fusion.
mm,
So I receive, let's say, an email from customer, and it
mm,
has certain questions, right? They're looking
mm,
for certain information. Now, sometime I may know the answer. Other times
mhm,
I may not know the answer. Then I may have to go to the sales engineer or the architect, right? Or sometime I
mhm.
have to dig deeper and get those answers. It takes time. And
Yeah.
sometimes I may be busy in certain things. It may take me a time. Maybe it may take me a couple of days to get those
Hmm.
answers.
Hmm.
Now, what happens is using the Copilot, all I do is essentially just tell the Copilot, hey, find the answers and draft
Hmm.
me a response.
Yeah.
My role now has fundamentally changed. Now, what I'm doing is essentially reviewing the answers that Copilot has given, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm reviewing it. Sometimes I do find differences between
Mm-hmm.
what I know and what Copilot's telling. I
Mm-hmm.
make sure that I validate those. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I do find that okay, the Copilot did not give a right answer because it referred to certain document which was outdated now, right? And again, it's a data quality issue. So my role remains, but my role from creator to has become now reviewer and then
Mm-hmm.
making sure, but at the end customer is still getting the response faster, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of how this change is coming about in the sales, right? The other thing is the um, sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, responding to RFPs, right,
Yeah.
etc. It takes quite a bit, but
Yeah.
now things have become easy. I use actually agents a lot. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
researcher agent, which is part of the Microsoft Copilot 365.
Mm-hmm.
I set that research. It takes a little time, maybe sometimes 5 minutes or a few minutes, and I set it about that. Okay, hey, take this RFP. Here are the questions. Now answer them. And I set certain context as well. And now it will generate all the answer. It will even generate the executive summary. Now I'm going to review those things. So things are going to be much faster. Sometimes I will discover the information that I was not aware of. And I
Mm-hmm.
probably would not know But since it has an ability to look into all the internal documentation and get me the right information, I feel
Yeah.
much more confident. So this human plus AI angle
Mm,
is really upping the game, right? It's making the response faster, it's
hmm.
making the response better, more
Yeah.
quality. And
Yeah.
I have a competitive advantage. If my competition is not using those tools, now
Mm,
I can drive this competitive advantage.
right. Right. No, that's very insightful, especially you made a very good point about that, the sales team, product team interface, where the sales team is always wanting more details on the product, new features rolling out. That whole keeping everybody in the loop is never perfect. There's always friction there. That's a very good place for AI to intervene. Um, and so Shadab, you've been kind of talking to enterprises about automation and analytics and now AI solutions for 2 decades, like you mentioned. What has changed in the sales process with the latest flavor of AI, which is Gen AI? Are you seeing more business teams as part of the decision-making process as against earlier IT teams? Is that happening, or what kind of changes are you seeing, or are there no changes?
I would say the changes are there. It's not
Mm,
like it's a completely upside down picture or something radically different, but there
mm,
are changes that are happening.
mm,
And the changes are because what's happening is that it's a time of upheaval.
mm,
The organizations are not all the organizations have figured this out. Not all the organizations have everything figured out. Even we have not figured out everything, as we are all creating the path as we go. So, from a, I would say most of the decisions, most of the processes which used to happen earlier are still about the same, right? Of course, they have become faster, they have become better, and all that. But the decision makers are still the same for similar kind of decisions, like the technology decision, for example. That continues to be the IT. But I think there is a class of organizations which have taken kind of an AI first approach,
mm,
and there you see the difference because those organizations are trying to create the difference. And the technology alone, like the typical IT, is not in the charge, right? For example, in the past,
mhm,
you have had situation where, let's say, for example, business intelligence solutions, right? Or any other AI solutions. It has been very technological centric solution, which means the IT was the one making a lot of decision. Now sometimes the business did have some empowerment, they had the analyst, etc. Sometimes they also made those decisions, like, okay, which platform they will go, but that's about it. But when it came to machine learning, and things became very, I would say, technical. Now what is happening is that I see bit more collaboration between the business and IT, because the solutions are emerging which are like for everyone. For example, this low code solutions are emerging, right? Low code, no code solutions. You can even do the vibe coding, right? Even the coding, actually you can use the Copilot. So even an analyst or a business user can now do the coding, right? Which they did not do earlier. So the roles are evolving, and because the roles are evolving, responsibilities are also shifting between the groups, which means that decision making is also changing. Right
mhm,
now they have more stake in it, right? So business wants to now discuss what are the AI solutions that we want to deploy, like for example the Copilot, or let's say we want to do the more agentic AI. So I want to know that, don't, for example, business is demanding that don't just buy a pro code kind of solution for agentic AI development. We want to have a low code solution so that we can also develop agents. So there is a hybrid of solutions. So I would say teams are coming together,
mhm.
responsibilities are converging in many cases, and the decisions are being made more collaboratively than
Yeah,
the silos, unlike earlier.
yeah,
So that's a
yeah,
key
yeah.
change. We definitely see that happening.
Mm, very, very interesting. And you kind of mentioned low code, no code, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is, when an enterprise decides on a specific use case, right? Like you rightly mentioned, there's a spectrum of ways they can implement it. The simplest way, they can use Copilot, or they can build a custom GPT. or they could use a completely no-code drag-drop solution, or they could use a low-code framework like Crew AI and things like that. Or they could work with a systems integrator to build something entirely from scratch, or they could buy an off-the-shelf SaaS solution from a startup or something. How does an enterprise decide which of this to pick for what kind of a use case? How's that decision usually made?
Yeah. And it is something that the organizations are is still working it out, I would say.
Hmm.
But overall, here's the approach that is emerging.
Mm.
The approach is essentially you are enabling everybody with some sort of AI enablement, right? Kind of an
Hmm.
AI assistant.
Hmm.
In our world, in Microsoft world, we call that Copilot empowerment, right? So
Okay.
essentially gives the Copilot to everyone, particularly the
Hmm.
Copilot 365, because most of the people are working in the Microsoft 365. They have the Outlook, they have the Office, they have the SharePoint, and everybody has those access, everybody has those enablement, and their data sits in that. Giving the
Yeah.
Copilot as an access, now what you're doing is you are fundamentally enabling everybody to
Mm.
have an AI assistant. Like, for example, when I go to vacation and come back after 1 week or 2 weeks, I'm like 1,000 emails, right?
Right.
So think about
Right.
it. How long will it take for me to catch up? But now
Hmm.
all I do is just ask the Copilot. Let's say, okay,
Mm.
give me the priority list of the emails that I have not addressed over the last 2 weeks, and I want to actually take an action and particularly prioritize these emails from my customers with domain name this, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also make sure that my boss also figures in that priority.
Right.
Suddenly now I'm enabled to take actions
Mm.
faster, right? So
Hmm.
so that's a great example of how you provide an AI assistant to everyone in the organization. That's one of the fundamental level.
Yeah.
Number two, however, anybody who can afford to can buy those solutions. So you are not going to
Mm.
get a competitive advantage there, but you will get a fundamental up upping of the productivity level of everyone, right?
Hmm.
People will have lesser burnout, people can work faster, etc. Number two is where you drive the competitive advantage. And this is where you have to build your own custom differentiated AI solutions. And that's
Hmm.
where the tools like AI Foundry, for example, and Azure, etc., that come about, or the agentic platform, or even the Copilot Studio, right? The low code agentic platform. You have to build some of these solutions, or you have to
Mm.
buy some of these solutions which others cannot buy or do not have the access, etc. That's where your competitive advantage will come. And the competitive advantage is a combination of your own skilled humans, then your own proprietary data, and these differentiated AI solutions. Putting these three together gives you the competitive advantage, right?
Mm.
And that's necessary if you want to really differentiate yourself. But
Yeah.
also, it is important that as you are creating these new solutions, there are more threat surfaces that you are creating, right? Whether
Mm.
internally or externally. We won't fully know until in the future that, okay, what threat surface and the potential and the vulnerabilities that we are creating with these new solutions. So it is also
Hmm.
important to create a really solid, robust cybersecurity foundation around it.
Hmm.
And the cybersecurity foundation, when I talk about it, I would say broadly like governance foundation, right? It should include the cybersecurity, it should include the data governance, the access control, and everything. You have to basically fundamentally reinvent or relook at your governance model, including security for all these solutions. These three are the most important thing where the organizations can actually up the game and make sure that it is also safe to operate.
Mm. It's a very nice framework to think through and action on. It's a very helpful framework. Um, I was recently at this online roundtable of startup founders, and these are pretty large kind of startups. And one of the constant things that I heard is kind of consistent with what you earlier said, that 80% of projects get killed. And then Gartner, I think last week or something, released something saying 52% of AI POCs will get shut down in 2026 or something like that. How does one make sure that your POC is not part of that 52% and yours goes through production? What are some things to keep in mind?
Yeah, this is an area which is of my interest as well, to make sure
Mm,
that the POCs are successful, because if POCs are not successful, there is no project, right?
mm,
And I'll tell you that there are several reasons in which POCs fail, but again, I ultimately hold the people accountable
mm,
for this failure rather than
mhm.
just blaming it on the technology, because I feel that the technology wise we are there now. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll give you some examples.
Mm,
Some of the POC that I've seen failing, it was blamed on that, oh, it was hallucinating. It was sometime giving wrong information,
mm,
or sometime it was giving outdated information, and that's why we are shutting down this POC. Well, let's look at it, right? What's happening? And then you drill down, and then you realize, okay, the documents that were provided itself had redundant documentation. There was an outdated documentation that you provided. Now, of course, AI models are going to do what it's going to do. You have to set the instructions. Either you say that, okay, pick the latest document, or you say that, okay, in case of conflict, give the priority to this documentation, or more importantly, even make sure that you are not providing redundant or conflicting information, right? So the data curation, data governance becomes and remains as important as ever. You are just changing the technology on top of it, but if it was a BI report, it would still have the same issues, right? So ultimately, you can blame it on the AI saying it hallucinates. No,
mm.
it just gives you what you provided. You did not do your job by making sure that data remains right. Other times you pick the wrong models, right? Sometimes you have certain desire, you want model to do more thinking, for example, but you're not picking the reasoning model and you're going with a standard model. Well, again, it's a human decision making which is impacting the project. People blame AI immediately because humans don't want to accept that, but the reality is somebody has made that decision there, and that has impacted the fate of the POC, and it
Yeah.
happens a lot. I don't believe that we still have a lot of POCs failing because the technology is absolutely not mature and people have done everything they could. Maybe 5 or 10%, but most of the
Yeah.
time it is a wrong decision making, wrong approach, and to be honest, sometimes it's just nothing but corporate politics. Okay,
Mm.
these are
Right.
the things people don't talk about, but I'm telling you, the corporate politics kill many more projects than anything else.
Yeah. And that's very true. It's not exactly a merit-based system inside enterprises on which project goes to production and which one does not.
People are
Yeah.
fighting to take
Yeah.
credit. People are fighting to make sure that the other person, because AI is, of course, a new shiny toy. Everybody wants
Right.
that ownership. There is a lot of battleground.
Yeah.
There is a lot of battles going on, and there are well wishers of the project, and there are like the people who do not want it to see it succeed.
Yeah. 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 Makes sense. And then, for a startup with a very good product, trying to get the attention of a buyer inside a enterprise, how do they stand out? Like, is there a specific kind of use case they should attack? Is there a specific structure their solution should take? How should they think about it?
One of the important thing is that the distribution remains important, right? And when you
Mm,
say distribution, means like whoever owns the channel will generally dominate the play. For example, the um, Google on the iOS device remains the most used search engine because it's a default option,
mm,
right?
mm.
They control that distribution. Apple can decide what they put on their device. People are not going to go a like to an extent to change those things. Generally, people
Yeah.
will just go with whatever default,
Mm,
and that's what happens similarly in the organization as well. So it's just so easier for people to use, for example, Copilot, because it is integrated with the Microsoft Office, or if it is
yeah.
a Copilot within the Power BI or Fabric, right? It is so integrated that it's easier for people to just simply enable it, use it. They don't have to worry about authentication and all those things. And I would say that those use cases are difficult one for the startups to try unless it's a wide space, right?
Mhm.
Nobody currently operates in that area. But otherwise, it would be very difficult to break in because of these governance, access, and security, and all those considerations. Many times, I'm seeing that a lot of organizations, their legal department, their security department, they don't approve the solution so easily. In fact, even the Microsoft and the AWS and GCP, they also go through the same rigorous process. They don't get approved on everything. The security group, the legal groups are very powerful in the current context. So
Mhm.
it is much harder for a startup to actually gain those kind of approval, right?
Mhm.
On the other hand, if the startups focus rather on the differentiated AI solutions bucket that I talked
Mhm.
about,
Mhm.
where they can actually provide that differentiation that currently is not met by these
Mhm.
bigger players who control the distribution channel. Now that's
Mhm.
where they can actually make a difference. Some of the or your product has to be just so good that it completely overwhelms whatever the existing choices are. Like for example, Cursor AI, they have done a really good product.
Mhm.
So they were just about the right time where it wasn't that pervasive. The biggies did not dominate that. Still, it was emerging field, and that's what they were able to very quickly gain the ground. Right.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you see, for example, QAI, you also talked about, right? That's also a good example. The agentic AI is right about the time where the other biggies were still developing solutions, etc. So they were
Yeah.
they were just in the right time. But now that everybody has, like Google has their own agentic platform, Microsoft has their own agentic platform, and multiple ones at that, is going to get harder, right? In the next
Right.
1 year for startups to create a new agentic platform, it's just going
Mhm.
to get harder and harder. So
Mhm.
you have to find your timing
Yeah.
of the solution, and if you are late, you need to be really, really good. And I would say that avoid that route rather than focus on, because AI offers such an opportunity right now that you can still reinvent so many things. The startups have a lot of opportunity right now, okay, to
Mhm. Mhm.
reinvent those things.
Mhm.
And that's what I would say, that like focus, find that niche, find the timing, and then go for it.
Okay, that's very valuable. Of all the emerging AI advancements that we are seeing, what do you think will have the most business impact over the next, 2, 3, 4 years?
First of all, this AI, this version of AI, generative AI,
Mm.
is so versatile that it impacts so many different things, right? It's
Mhm.
just unbelievable. Um, it has, it really has, like, for example, changed the ways in which we do
Mhm.
fundamental things.
Mhm.
And I would say that our productivity is probably right now the most important bucket where people are making a lot of difference.
Mhm.
The other thing is, I think the experience, right, from the customer point of view,
Yeah.
that I would say will change a lot, and customers will welcome it to a certain extent. For example, I'll give you, we used to have these telephone lines where customers could call and talk to someone and resolve the issue. And then came these, like, calls where you try to, basically they try to promote, okay, talk to a chatbot, and those chatbots were dumb, right? I mean, they barely solved any issue.
Yeah.
It was horrible, right?
Mhm.
The technology actually made it difficult.
Yeah.
Technology made it very cumbersome, and it degraded the customer experience.
Mhm.
But now we have an opportunity with the new generative AI technology where it can maybe even make it better, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that's what is happening. For example, right now people are doing a lot with the chatbots, contact center kind of solutions, where the generative AI is playing a larger role. And it doesn't need to be just generative AI. Generative AI can be an assistant, so you can still have the people talk with customer, but generative AI is there as an assistant. It is guiding, it is providing the information as the customer is speaking. With that context, it is providing the immediate information on the screen for the assistant. Now, what can happen is the calls can become shorter because the issue will be resolved faster, and it will be very, very prompt and relevant. So
Mhm.
like earlier, if it took 3 minutes, it will probably be solved in 1 minute. So you can still provide pretty good solutions. You don't have to like fundamentally like just redirect every customer to a chatbot, but rather you combine that together. The human plus AI will actually do things much faster. So we need to retain the good aspects of the current world
Mhm.
and include the new aspects of this AI, what it can enable, and then actually, I would say the convergence of the current and the future, the benefits that the technology provide. That is actually what we need to find the sweet solution. But I'm afraid the problem is again, Binny. The problem is that you know humans are greedy, and
Mhm.
many companies have taken an approach. Okay, let's replace everybody and just put a chatbot out there, and then the AI will handle all the things. That kind of approach may not necessarily result into things. In fact, we have
Yeah,
seen an example of Klarna AI,
exactly.
right? I mean, they try to replace it, and then now they're saying that no, no, no. Actually, we will continue. We are now hiring the humans again because
Yeah,
certain things have to be done by the humans. So this is a little bit of a learn kind of approach. People are
yeah,
and companies are learning,
yeah,
but we need to find the sweet spot in between
yeah.
somewhere.
Right, right. Makes sense. Makes sense. And when it comes to pricing AI solutions, Shadab, there is talk about that pricing could change to things like outcome-based pricing and stuff like that. Are you actually seeing that in action? Are enterprises actually responsive to things like that, or is pricing still very either time and material or SaaS subscription? Is that really how is that?
So I would say at this point of time, I think the pricing is something is still being experimented upon,
Mm,
right? Most of the time, because AI is something new, right now the focus is still cost-based approach, right? In
mm,
fact, the underlying technology, for example, the models, right?
mm,
They have been constantly trying to reduce the cost. There is a lot of competitive pressure as well, right? The cost of AI, in fact, the last 2 years has reduced by 95%, right? Imagine
yeah.
that, right? It's probably the only thing that is going against the inflation. So because there is a lot of focus on cost, it is creating new cost items for the organizations, and they want to make it more popular. They want to, for the widespread deployment, they want to get it as cheap as possible, which has been the focus. On the other hand, I would say the outcome based pricing is something that is still being experimented upon. At this point of time, we don't see that a lot. At this point of time, most of the time it is right now where we are taking the cost based approach, provide the solution, and let customers. Sometimes the customers are, that's why customers are, it also is helping in the way that customers are able to adopt it faster, because if it is an outcome based pricing, a larger cut will go to the solution provider, right?
Mm,
Customer may have a lesser cut of that. But in some of the cases, customer are getting like 10 times the returns. Okay, in
mm,
fact, our own case studies, etc., and the reports that we have done, Microsoft actually commissioned a yearly case study or yearly study with IDC, and it looks at the business value of AI. The average return that the organizations are getting is $3.7 for every dollar that they spend.
mhm.
And surprisingly, that returns come in as low as 6 months. Okay, between 6 months to 18 months, you can get that return. Now, that's a huge return,
Mhm.
right? And it is because that, again, because of the cost based approach. So organizations are very quick to adopting it because they're getting that kind of returns very quick. If it was an outcome based approach, yeah, I don't know, like some companies, then the returns will obviously be lesser, and the organization may be slower to adopt it. That's one
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
There are some experimentation. For example, you have seen that OpenAI also has tried to float some idea. They say that, okay, we will create a, let's say, software engineering agent, and we will charge $10,000 a month, right? Or
Right.
$20,000 a month, something
Right.
like that.
Mhm.
That is an outcome based pricing, right?
Mm,
Because what they're talking about is, for example, they're saying that, okay, our deep researcher agent or something like that, right? Let's say if it does a work of a PhD equivalent person, then why can't we charge $20,000 a month, right? Now, that's an idea that was floated. It hasn't been really put into place. Companies are trying. Okay, they are looking at outcome based approach. They're trying to see that, okay, what I'm enabling and can I get a better share of it? I don't know. I'm pretty sure that that will happen. Um, but right now, we are still in experimental phase. We are still evaluating. Um, and I would say it is still not there yet. Okay, it will take some time.
Okay, makes sense. And finally, Shadab, do you have like a contrarian take on AI that what most people are not expecting that you possibly see from your vantage point?
Yeah, I would say, I think one of the thing that we all expect and we have found the pattern, right? Like as Gartner does, like its hype curve. And, there is an expectation that, okay, there will be a adjustment of the expectation from AI. Sometimes it is considered a magic wand, and sometimes we have the misplaced expectations. So, that adjustment, I would say, is already happening, and that's why you see the POCs are failing, and it is helping adjust the expectations, etc.
Hmm.
Number two is that that adjustment will continue to happen, but
Hmm.
everybody knows that. But I would say something other than that that I have seen, which I believe is going to happen, contrarian,
Hmm.
as I say that it is impacting humans,
Hmm.
right? In good ways and also adverse ways, right?
Hmm.
It is creating job insecurity. It is creating a challenge, and particularly when the organizations, I would say, greedfully declare that, okay, I'm going to cut the jobs, I'm going to fire people because I'm deploying AI. That's not creating a very conducive environment, right?
Hmm.
What will happen is people will start resisting. In fact,
Hmm.
you can see that already happening. There was a backlash against Duolingo, the Klarna AI, and other organizations who have done the AI first memo, and they're saying that we will not hire if the job can be done by an AI. And those
Hmm.
organizations are being ultimately backlashed upon. So
Yeah.
I feel that there is kind of a people resistance which is brewing. There is a movement that has also started that, okay, refuse to use AI, resist the AI, because people are seeing it as an existential threat, right? In the way that, they're basically the jobs are being taken away, right? And I think that can continue to blow up. It could
Yeah.
become a much larger issue. And if that happens, it would impact, because people are very powerful nowadays, right? And we have seen it. The companies have to roll back their policies, roll back their decisions if people boycott them, right? If
Yeah.
people refuse to buy their products, refuse to, or employees refusing to go along, right, with certain decisions. People are powerful. It's like basically the societies are pretty democratic about it, and I think that I feel is something that I'm a little bit worried about,
Yeah.
that it is happening. Human
Mm.
greed is playing part in this. This is not about
Hmm.
technology. This is about the human greed, and if we don't do it right, people will not adopt it at the pace it deserves. To be honest, right? It can better our life, but if we are trying to use it as a tool to just make rich people more richer,
Yeah.
uh, it's going to have some backlash.
Mm. That's a fantastic point because even when I read the Klarna release and all that, and I may be wrong about this, but many times companies put out these releases because they have other motives. They probably have some kind of a financing event coming up, an IPO or a large fundraise, and they want to send a certain signal
Absolutely.
to the investors. And they have to send it out. And like you said, that does a lot of harm to the ecosystem than it does because now Klarna's bringing people back, and then everybody's questioning how is AI ROI really bad? But it was never bad. It was just positioned very differently. So that's a fantastic
Absolutely.
point.
It,
Yeah.
it is. It is. I mean, in fact, it has started occurring many times when we discuss with customers. We discuss about, okay, yeah, this is great. Let's do this. This is AI. And when you talk privately,
Mm.
the discussion turns into, okay, is AI going to take my job? Right.
Hmm.
So even the people who are in charge of making it successful, if they have their own security, how do you expect them to make it successful? Right. It will blow back. It is
Hmm.
very important that organizations deal it sensitively, and make sure that the people are respected in this whole change, essentially, and their concerns are should be taken into account. Because if people are not going to have job, they're not going to have spending power. They are ultimately, it's a circle of life, right? If there is no consumption because people cannot afford it, there are no companies who can sell, right? It's
Hmm.
going to impact the economy is a flow of money, and that should
Hmm.
continue to happen.
Yeah, totally. On that positive note, Shadab, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a fantastic conversation. Lots of very nice insights.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. You're doing a great job, Binny. I really love the podcast and the work that you have done. And, I'm happy to be here.
Really appreciate the kind words, Shadab.